They often say there's more than one way up the mountain. The Ronin usually chooses the road less traveled. It is often a lonely road and often a dangerous road, but it is the most rewarding in terms of what you find out about yourself and those around you. This is where we discuss the trials, tribulations, and methods that those Ronin use to overcome those obstacles on their way, the Ronin Code. All right, everybody, this is Ronin Code, episode 8. Been a little while, but that's because we try to make sure I have the best of the best as far as raising the collective consciousness, as I like to call it. So I'm joined by Mr. Ian Callendar and Rebecca Tabor. I will let them introduce themselves, let you guys know what they have going on. Rebecca, let's start with you.
Great. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of Merit America. So Merit America is a new nonprofit. We're about 3 years old, and we exist to help super talented, hardworking folks who don't have college degrees get from where they are into awesome new careers, predominantly in technology, but other fields as well. So we recognize that the biggest predictor right now of whether you have a college degree is how much money your parents have. And that's not fair. And so we want to create a pathway, whether you're driving for Uber, working in retail, whatever it is you're doing. If you want to go from that into a really high-paying job in tech with benefits and advancement opportunities, as long as you're willing to put in the work over 14 to 20 weeks, we'll give you a program that you can complete while you work to get from where you are into that great new career.
Nice. Perfect for this conversation. Ian, man, how are you today? Let us know what you have going on.
Well, I'm doing well. Ian Callendar, DC native, living in Southwest DC, co-founder of Sandlot Southeast, and also co-founder of Blind Wino, now Culture House, and also the co-founder of Arena Social Arts Club, which is a new nonprofit. We're about 2 years old, and our mission is to provide a gallery and studio art space for artists of color and provide them with mentorship tools and resources to amplify and extend their art expertise. And that's something that is definitely necessary in our cultural town of Washington, D.C. So very excited for that, and Sandlot Southeast is hopefully opening relatively soon and expanding. We'll have Sandlot Northwest in Georgetown, and then Sandlot Tysons, and then Sandlot Anacostia. So a lot is bubbling for the Sandlot brand right now.
Very nice. Now, you guys are perfect for this conversation because one of the things that got me into the field that I'm in now, what got me into fitness was kind of the driving force behind you guys' nonprofit and your projects, which is extending myself out to other people in the context of my energy, my time, my information, whatever I could do to help everyone else along, because I don't think any energy is wasted if it's used to build up those around you. I went to school for engineering, and when I got to school, I hated working out, but I was at Ohio State where everybody's a super athlete, so there's nothing else to do but go to the gym. And it was like, it clicked really quickly for me. The thing I hated about working out was the way it was framed. And I started understanding all the benefits beyond just the physical part. Like that's the part that we all hate, but that's the part we all focus on. But the mental benefits I realized were there. And I was like, you know what, if I could help everyone else not have to go through this same ideology of pain, gain, and how you're supposed to look and all that, and really make it about like who they are and build themselves up, I think I can make more impact than just designing cars. Even though I still love cars, it really just struck me as something I could take and kind of do more with. So with that in mind, we'll start with you, Rebecca. Like, what does the idea of creating impact or having an impact on those around you mean to you?
Yeah, it's funny. We think a lot about that. In my own career, I've spent the last 10 years working on education issues, and sometimes working in government, sometimes in technology. And what's interesting is in those, more scalable ventures, I was always left wondering, like, are we actually impacting anyone? So yes, we can say that 10,000 people signed up for a course or 50,000 people have access to this new program. But if we don't know, what's going on, what's the impact of it, then have we actually made a difference? And so the neat thing with Merit America is, we judge our impact by how much money our graduates earn after our program versus what they earned before. So, they tell us, fill out a long wage history survey. So we look at what their wages were in the 12 months before our program. And then we track 5 years after the program. And the neat thing is we're seeing that the average participant comes in making $26,000 a year, and they go through our program 14 weeks. They can do it while they work. And after the program, they get into jobs making on average $50,000 a year. So that's how we think about impact. But really our goal is not just to have that direct impact, but to also impact overall education system. So people realize that the college degree can't be the gatekeeper it is now for getting into a great career. So how do we impact how employers think about hiring people who don't have college degrees? How do we impact how colleges think about providing faster, more flexible options for people who don't want to spend 4 years trying to get ahead? And how governments think about funding systems. So it's not just about helping unemployed people get a job, but helping folks who might be in a job looking for a better career get into that.
Nice. Now, I really like a point you brought up specifically about the ripple effect. You know what I mean? And how it's extending beyond just the person that you're actually creating the impact for directly. And it's more so about like the at-large system that is integrated into that. And that's kind of one of the things that I feel separates impact as far as like what it really is. It's about kind of that ripple effect, right? It's about something that goes beyond necessarily your tangible reach. That's fantastic. Ian, what you guys do specifically is wildly successful in that regard because of the different people it touches and the new studio space, as you kind of discussed. Can you go into that for us?
Yeah, and I think what Rebecca was alluding to, in addition to what our program is intention. You know, like when you think about impact, you go in with a product or a desire in mind, and it's almost like the simplest terms is problem solving. We have the ability within all of our networks and our organizations to fill a void or to close a gap or to bridge a variance. And I think that is the future of nonprofit organizations, but also not layering the scale. You might have 10 organizations that have the same mission or the same focus, but when you are able to, articulate an area or an entry point where there's a need, that to me is where you can gain a different reaction to the level of impact that you have in a community. And, when we launched Blind Wino in 2013, we were filling a gap. There wasn't a lowbrow art studio or gallery space in Washington, D.C. Proper outside of the Smithsonian institutions and maybe some other private institutions like, Transformer or the Hamiltonian and some others. And that's a different classification of art space. Where does that align for artists, specifically artists of color, to feel welcome and to feel warm in their creativity, in their showcasing in their exhibits? And it was almost like a lesson learned, which is why Arena Social is more of the amplification of that. And again, the more intentional space that provides this safe haven for artists of color to now feel like they do have a home base or a hub that's dedicated for them. Of course, with George Floyd's murder and some of the other racial injustice that has occurred over the past 400 years, really, but 365 days with George Floyd. Now we have an opportunity where, when you look at it from a resource perspective, everyone on the corporate sector is looking to amplify, Black voices, and we want to be able to create this foundation or this infrastructure so that we now have the resources to now kind of filter that to the artists and to the individuals that need it the most. Later, exponentially just growing the need and desire of making that deep impact in our neighborhoods.
Nice. You guys both made very, very, very good points. And a lot of it, for me specifically, I attached with specifically what you said, Ian, as far as the idea of intention. I realized after a while, like, if my intention is literally just to go out and do whatever I can to build up myself and therefore those around me, the return comes in whatever form it does, but it truly comes from the idea of that being carried on to the next person and the next person. And that's how you get a collective consciousness raising. And which is why, Rebecca knows when I train, my biggest thing is I like to inform people as much as possible. And I think you guys both bring up a good point. Are we giving everyone the tools to do whatever is the best in their capacity? And that's really what's important. And then creating the systems and bridging different systems from one place to another to allow people to really explore that at every level. And it is kind of interesting, as you said, Ian, we're seeing like the corporate structure try to figure out how to reverse engineer itself to kind of bridge that gap. It's the intention of doing something that doesn't necessarily always highlight you or your exact business, but highlights an idea and like a methodology of progression, which I think is really important.
And when you look at impact and influence, like, let's just use social media, for example. I don't consider myself an influencer. I don't know if Rebecca considers herself an influencer.
I'm not even on Twitter.
My follower count is not in the tens of thousands, and I don't get Nikes delivered to my doorstep. But when you think about, there's different classifications of influence. Back in the early 2000s, I was a sneakerhead. I was a sneaker collector. So I was that influential guy within that community, that subculture of collecting sneakers. But I took that influence and I repurposed it to benefit others. So we were doing Kicks for Kids charity shoe drives every year. That was our charity or our philanthropy component. So it wasn't always just about me collecting sneakers and showing everybody my collection and saying, hey, I got these and you don't. It's like, how can I use that influence to generate impact? And I think that's when you can really understand people's, kind of foresight on what their true goals are.
I like that. Rebecca, I just kind of segue directly into that with you. Do you believe there's a difference between impact and influence, or do you think I think Ian put it really well, where one is kind of derivative of the other. They kind of go together, where you can use one to benefit the other and create kind of like a larger overall goal.
I think you and Ian both said it so well. I'm not going to mess with the equation here. So let's leave it at that.
All right. I like it. So like I discussed, like when I went to school, the catalyst for me deciding, to change from the purely engineering route to what I call engineering people, was me feeling like I could do more and see more in people if I'm working directly with them. And it was the catalyst for me to change my major from engineering to kinesiology, which my mom was like not on board with, because she had spent all that time watching me do all these crazy classes, talk about building cars my whole life. Rebecca, what was the catalyst for you that put you on the path towards wanting to create opportunities for others the way you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been asked that before, and I always say it was less of a light bulb moment going off, a light switch, and more just a dimmer over a really long decade plus of working in education. But I think one of the experiences that really stands out to me, I was super lucky to go to high school. My grandparents paid for the private school tuition, where everyone went to college. It was just the default. You applied for college, you went to college, and almost everyone got to go to college without working during college. And at the same time, I was always drawn to schools and, had the chance to volunteer in a great school in DC, Walker Jones Education Campus, for many years. And I worked with the Talented and Gifted program there and had an exceptional student. And I remember one day he said, I want to go to the college you went to. And we were talking about it. I was so excited. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, he's way smarter and way harder working than I ever was. So like, no problem. Of course he'll get in. And it was right around the time that all this great data was publicized about how easy it was to get into different colleges based purely on your high school. So it had nothing to do with who you were or how hard you worked, just, the high schools you're coming from. And so I went home and I did the math, like just using the data for the type of school I went to versus his type of school. And I'll ask you about, how much more likely do you think I was to get in to this one college than he was? Just purely because I went to a high income high school, he went to a low income school.
That still is kind of ridiculous for me to kind of quantify, actually.
Ian, what do you think?
It's exponential for sure, but I can't put my finger on the number.
Yeah, so the actual number was 3,000 times. So 3,000 times difference. So I say, like, imagine a roulette wheel with 3,000 numbers.
Right.
The kid I was working with had to get one of 3,000 numbers, and I could get any other of the 2,999 numbers. And I say that because I think we all walk around knowing, like, it's really an unfair system, where you go to school and your zip code determines so much. But that just hit it home. It's like, it's not even 5 or 10 or 50 times, like 3,000 times. So, the whole thing is so broken, and that drives me every day, just, having been on the other side and seeing how easy some folks have it, and realizing that talent is equally distributed in our country, but opportunity is not.
And that was kind of similar. Like, I had I graduated from the Matha High School, and I had the option of either staying local and going to GW to play music because I was in music. You know, I went to DeMatha to play music, not sports like everyone else did at DeMatha, and or Drexel. And you know, I knew that Drexel was, you know, the smarter institution, and going to get an engineering degree versus getting a music degree is, you know, almost like, again, it's like, how much money do you want to make coming out of college? And this is just me totally being ignorant about music, because look at all the music producers and everyone else that's millions and millions of dollars. So I chose an engineering route. And then when I graduated and I started working for the Department of Defense in Skyline, Virginia, and Drexel was a co-op school. So we had the ability to work in our respective field as kind of like internships, paid internships, and I did all my co-ops at home. So I was in the Department of Defense kind of arena already. And when I graduated and I started working there, I said, you know what, this isn't me. This isn't naturally what I want to do. And there's no way for me to make a difference in my communities by being in this secure facility, helping 5-star generals and so on and so forth. That was just my mindset. So for me at that point, it was, what can I do to showcase this subculture of sneaker collecting to the general market, but also let people know that this is another medium of artistic expression by the different type of footwear and shoes that you wear. So at that point, that's when it started to really build on me and focus on those that were less fortunate, the kids that didn't have the ability to get the $100 Jordans or the $100 New Balances. And that's when it started to shift for me of being more community driven and always having a subsidiary track that always has this philanthropy arm to benefit those that are less fortunate.
Ian, we should talk more. I feel like there could be some cool ways to work together.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll send you my info. And
you guys both discussed as kind of like an internal dialogue that has existed that you are very aware of at these moments, that kind of allowed you to be flexible and move from one place to another, one space to another. Specifically, Ian, kind of like similar situation with me, right? Where it's like I was doing something and I was like, you know what? This doesn't feel like me, right? Like, and there's a moment where you have to kind of analyze yourself and your perspective of the world around you. Yeah. And then your intention drives how you kind of speak to yourself, so to speak. With Rebecca, I always tell people, like, one of the things I love most about the fitness world is it's the greatest place to determine that self-talk. You're never going to get the same level of feedback as you do from the body and the brain, right? At least an evolutionary response to be afraid of the unknown. Like, we're not designed to take risks because that's not safe. What have you guys done, if there is anything you're conscious of, or was it always natural when it comes to that internal dialogue? I like I said with Becca, I use working out all the time because I'm like, hey, the weight's there. The obstacle's there. What really matters is how do you speak to yourself about your ability to overcome the obstacle? Do you tell yourself, like, you know, many kids in my position, to your point, Rebecca, you know, when we know that opportunity isn't, you know, necessarily spread out evenly as well as talent is, you know, it's very easy to tell yourself, like, well, why am I going to shoot for the stars when, like, I don't see a way for the stars to become tangible? And people develop internal dialogue that is kind of conditioned by their environment, conditioned by the narratives and the stories they've been told over time. And I find developing some really positive interpretation of that is really important. I say that because, you know, I was talking to somebody about, like, do positive affirmations work? And I said, well, it's not the words you speak, it's what you feel about the words you speak, right? I could go to the gym every day and tell myself I hate working out, but I know what I really mean by that. I don't like the pain. So what I'm going to do is try my hardest to get it done anyway. And it's going to lead to some type of positive affirmation deeper down. So Rebecca, like, as you discussed, you said you sat down, you kind of crunched the numbers yourself. And you're just like, this doesn't feel right. How does internal dialogue, or how does that self-talk really benefit you going forward?
So we're 3 years old now as a nonprofit, and as Brandon, who I've known for most of this nonprofit journey, knows, it was really, really hard getting started. I don't know if Ian feels the same way, but starting a nonprofit, because no one wants to donate money to something that's brand new. And whereas if it's a for-profit, you can get an angel investor who's like, all right, I'll take on more risk because there's more upside. That just doesn't exist as a nonprofit. No one wants to support something super early. I also listened to a bunch of podcasts at the time. I loved Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale. And the thing that never really clicked with me is a lot of those were about, failures of outputs. So like, I worked hard, I did this and this, and I still failed, but I persevered through. But a lot of them didn't talk about failures of inputs, which is like, hey, I was just really tired and burnt out on Saturday after working like 12 days straight. And so I took the day off and watched Netflix. Even when you do everything right. But sometimes you're also not going to do everything right. And that's okay, because long run, you have to take care of yourself and recognize your limitations.
Nice. That's
I think for me, it was really just ensuring that what I was doing was the right thing. And like, just almost to a point where I was almost doubting myself. Like, am I doing the right thing? Will it be received properly? Is my intention, authentic? Is all of those, kind of levels of introduction, true to form? And it deterred me often on the right path or the best path for what it was that I was trying to achieve. And I still kind of feel that way. I do have those moments where I'm just super nervous and I just feel like this is going to fail or this isn't going to be as successful as I want it to be, almost compared to like that one Instagram post that you post and you're like, oh my gosh, are people going to like it? Are they not? Like, and it's probably just the Virgo in me, that causes me to feel that way. But the way, beyond that is no one would really, know or experience what I'm experiencing or feeling at that time unless I put it out there. And that's when you really can understand true feedback, true, ideations or people's kind of thoughts of what it is that you're doing to get that affirmation or that validation. And beyond that, I mean, it's more just seeing other people who you confide in and mentors and folks that you look up to and really see kind of like their journey and understand that there will be those moments and times where it's not as clear and concise, but it's super cloudy, but at some point the sun will move those clouds away and then you'll just have a greater direction.
Right. I think it's really challenging is developing the not necessarily like love of failure as much as the love of the process of trying. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're going out there to do something that's never been done, there is no measuring stick for you to figure out like how far you are. And like sometimes we do get focused, mostly I think because we're conditioned to see things not working out more than we are seeing them work out. We're conditioned to not necessarily believe enough in the outcome to say we actually gave 100% and then test that, right? Rebecca, we talked about it before. When it comes down to building teams and finding community, kind of like how all three of us are on this call, I think a lot of it is people are afraid to just put everything out there and put everything on the table, not only for themselves, but for other people. And I find that if we do that ourselves, we can kind of invite that same energy from other people around us. And then you start to build these connections that kind of work out really well. When it comes to partnerships, what are some of the things you guys try to focus on, or what are some of the things you used to help bring people on board with you? Like, what were the things that you kind of always carried with you? Like Rebecca, right? When we first talked, you gave me a full pitch. Like I wouldn't have been able to introduce you to this dude if she didn't spend like half an hour telling me about it. It was good because then it wasn't her pitching me, right? Like she wasn't selling me on anything. She was just telling me about something she's passionate about. And therefore it made me passionate about it. So then when I go talk to a dude, he's like, wow, who's the person that got this dude talking about something that has nothing to do with him whatsoever? So when we're talking about partnerships, because community building is really important to driving impact further than our reach. Ian, what are some of the things that you really focus on or you really like kind of carry with you as like your tokens that you're always trying to push forward?
I think the one key component for me is to do things that haven't been done yet. more specifically in the physical space, and going into neighborhoods that lack this type of engagement. So, to go back to 2010, when we first kind of started doing these non-traditional, spaces and activating with arts, music, entertainment, fashion, food. Um, we did it on 14th Street, right below Florida Avenue, or D-Dot building, and no one really understood what it was like to produce something of this magnitude. But almost think of it like rave style, right? Where you have this rundown building, and then you have all this activity inside. But again, when you think about 14th Street in 2010, nobody was going to 14th Street between U Street and P Street. And now it's like the mecca of restaurants. You have 60 restaurants between those two streets, right? So in 2013, same idea with Blind Wino. No one was going to Southwest Waterfront at that time. Like it was almost like a dead zone. And then boom, out of nowhere, you have the wharf development and, 80,000 people patronizing this old church that we wrapped an exterior mural around. 2015, same idea, taking over an old-fashioned warehouse on 7th and 8th Street, right when the circulator just arrived, or not the circulator, the trolley, the streetcar on 8th Street just arrived. So again, creating these moments in different pockets of neighborhood that needed cultural upliftment, and again, aligning with all the cultural aspects of engagement, arts, fashion, music. And now again, looking at the ideas now and saying, okay, well, now that we've kind of secured this market from a real estate perspective, how can we introduce nuances that need to be corrected, like again a safe space for artists of color to create art and showcase their art, but even the Nicholson Project in Ward 7, right off of Minnesota Avenue and Pennsylvania Avenue, creating an urban farm. It's a food desert over in Ward 7 and Ward 8. So how can we take a piece of real estate and redesign and repurpose it where we have an artist in residency program or urban farm? And this is on 9,000 square feet of space right on Nicholson. So those are things and solutions that we try to design now, even though to secure real estate is hella hard, but by having the relationships with developers that own the real estate, it's almost easier to have a dialogue with property owners, knowing that we're the ones that's holding the key to what really pushes me to kind of drive forward and just, if we're doing something right here. And I think that's the biggest chip on the shoulder.
Nice. So Rebecca, like you're one of those people who, like I said, after that first meeting, I could tell, like, if it's an idea, it's going to go down. You're doing basically, like, the thing I like about you two is Ian, like he's saying, creating the spaces for people. You're building these people themselves, right? Like you're instilling all of these ideas into these individuals, and each and every one of these individuals. And I find that to be fascinating because building people is a thing. Like that is a really, really different thing. Like you said, you tracking their income and their ideas and how they see themselves before your program and then through the program, right? Because I can imagine there's a lot of roadblocks. Like these are people whose lives are probably really busy and they've had a really hard time already. What are some of the things that you really try to drive home with your participants, your employees? You've told me about like the fantastic team you build. What are some of those kind of like themes and ideologies that you kind of try to instill into the folks that you're working with?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll say I appreciate the description that we build people, but we always say we don't change anyone's lives. Everyone in our program they're changing their own lives. The metaphor we say is we're holding the ladder, they're climbing it.
Nice.
So our goal is to provide the pathway and say, clear the way, here's what you need to do. And we're there as cheerleaders and accountability partners and providing the resources. But it's really, we're just finding incredibly talented, hardworking folks who are who are ready for the change, and they're the ones who do the hardest work there. So it's actually, you know, a great point, because I think we are really selective in who joins our team to work on this issue. And the thing that we're really looking for is people who realize, you know, our system is fundamentally flawed, and we need to create new shortcuts for folks who've been, you know, really screwed over by a systemically racist, inequitable system to get from where they are into the careers that they deserve to be in.
Nice. I think what was really cool about what you're saying is, like, similar to what Ian's doing with the space, right? Like you said, you're just creating the ladder and allowing these people to flourish in that space because they just didn't have the systems in place for them to be able to do that, right? Like, not trying to replace anything, but almost trying to awaken things that really should exist in spaces where they don't, which is really, really interesting. To that point, I don't know if you mind if I bring this up, like the idea of you bringing on the co-CEO. I thought that moment was really, really interesting, and we kind of talked about it, and it relates to the idea of creating impact, right? Like, sometimes, which I found fascinating about that whole moment with you, sometimes it's, okay, what am I going to be holding on to more? Do I want this whole team and this whole theme and this whole idea to be built, or is it about me and my involvement in it, right? And that's I can create impact if I bring on this guy as a co-CEO, right? And like has really little to do with my title, because it has everything to do with how well it's going to benefit everyone else in this program. How did you go about that process, and like how did you feel when that was going down?
Yeah, such a good memory, and you were such a good advisor during all of that. But I think, you know, for any big decision, if you're, you know, an entrepreneur or a leader, or just, you know, your own entrepreneur of you, whatever it is, I think it's just really going back to your values. So how does the decision to go either way impact, you know, the values you care about and the things you don't care about? And for that decision, it was at a point where I realized we just needed more capacity to make the most of our mission and our opportunity, and that I alone couldn't do it. And at the same time, I had a, you know, former colleague and good friend who was the CEO of another nonprofit, looking for his next chapter, and thought, wow, you know, bringing him in and working with him on this would impact all the things I care about, making an impact, having great relationships at work and at home, and living a sustainable, you know, well lifestyle. And then the only downsides are things I don't care about, you know, ego and being the sole decision maker, and all sorts of shadow values that I think can creep in, but were easy to see here. And so ended up being the best decision I've ever made. I get to work every day with someone I trust and respect and have fun with. And Merit America is so much better because we get his talent and expertise working on it as well.
Right, right. I find that incredible because, Ian, you work with another friend of mine, Scooty, and a bunch of other people on all these projects, and you're constantly building teams. And I think what Rebecca said is really important to that. I'm sure you agree, where it's like, it's very much so less about me as the person and like how I feel and what I'm going to get out of it. And it's much more about the mission overall, which is what I think allows you to kind of continuously build these new spaces. Like you were saying, going from Sandlot Southeast to Southwest to Tyson's and Blind Wino. It's the idea of the mission being bigger than the person.
Yeah. And also too, like, I know what I'm good at, right? Like, I'm not the subject matter expert at everything. What I'm good at is what you've seen. You know, it's creating these infrastructures and foundations where other people can flourish, and that's practically where I have my best groove. You know, Scooty's great at marketing, promoting, advertising, you name it. He knows how to grab a mic, take his shirt off, and start the party. Right, that's his thing. And he's, you know, the influencer, right? You know, so it's almost like you have the person of impact and then you have the person of influence. So collectively, that's like a dynamic duo. And that's part of the reason, I mean, aside from our 30 plus year, you know, friendship and of us just growing up, you know, together in the city, that just goes to show that you can work with, you know, others, and that crabs in a barrel mentality is just a myth.
I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Thank you both so much for joining me. I think this has been a great conversation. But yeah, guys, it's been fantastic. Like, I really love the idea of creating things bigger than myself and creating reach beyond myself. And I will say this, it took me a little while, but once you realize you didn't have to be the star of the show, but the actual mission and the idea that you're trying to push can be the star. I think that's the thing, that if more people gravitated towards that idea, we would see a lot more flourishing happening amongst everyone, amongst all levels. Before we go, is there anything you guys have coming up? Anything you guys are working on? I am 100% sure this is going to lead to you guys working together in the future anyway. But anything you guys have coming up that
already
you
got
want to talk about? Yeah. Anything you guys got going on that you want to talk about, except for the new space, right? When is that opening up, Ian?
It's not April Fool's, so we are going to open April 1st. We do have a amazing partnership with Uber Eats that allowed us the opportunity to grant Black-owned restaurants with complimentary space for the entire year via food truck, fully decked out from our friends at Horace and Dickey's, and then a catering kitchen at the bottom of the Marion apartment building right across from that stadium. So that kicks off April 1st, and then Sandlot Northwest in Georgetown will probably open a month later. Same with the Sandlot Tysons. And then Sandlot Anacostia will probably open Labor Day weekend. So just a lot of cool things. And Arena Social Arts Club will probably open that, April, May. There's no rush there, but we definitely want to be ready and willing to take on an amazing Juneteenth celebration to really amplify Black excellence and really use that as a remembrance of what slavery meant to our community and how we can really create dynamic memories beyond that for Juneteenth. So lots to come.
Nice. Rebecca, thank you so much. I think more than anything, I'm not going to forget the 3,000 times more likely to go to a certain school based off a high school. I think that as a moment,
Oh, right.
You may have said that wasn't a light bulb moment, but it was a light bulb moment for me just now because that's incredible. Thank you guys. Thank you both so much for joining me. This is fantastic. Rebecca Tabors, co-CEO, Merit America, Ian Callendar. You guys have been fantastic. Have a good day. Hope I didn't freeze too much.
Thank you.
Bye.